Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So Xbox, I'd say that they've been pretty busy over the last month or so. I mean, if you kind of rewind here, Xbox Game Pass has constantly been in the news, but really, I mean, that's always kind of the case anymore. Then we got some updates on the Activision Blizzard acquisition, and now today, the Xboss, Phil Spencer himself did an interview with Bloomberg. As we all know, he's usually a bit of a treasure trove of information, and that was very much the case here, as not only did he specifically express his thoughts on the Activision Blizzard buyout, but he also may have hinted at their plans for even more acquisitions in the future. Yes, you did hear that right. There's possibility of even more acquisitions, so we're going to discuss all that later on today, as well as a new Nintendo event. I guess Nintendo wanted to join in on all the Gamescom fun after all, as they announced their own little thing that will be happening later this week, so we'll talk about that one as well. Per usual though, you all know I have to do it here, but we are on the road to 50,000 subscribers thanks to your all's outpouring support. Thank you all so much. I truly do appreciate it. But for those that haven't joined yet, make sure to hit those buttons below. Subscribe, like, and most importantly, join the notification gang. That bell button will directly deliver my new videos to your own personal device. You know, it's kind of like having your own personal FedEx delivery person without the worry of damaged or stolen packages. So go ahead and make sure to hit those buttons below. Let's go and jump into things though, starting off with some PlayStation news today. They actually have a few different things happening right now. First of which is a brand new trailer for The Last of Us Part 1, though I'm not telling you about this new trailer for you to go out and watch it. Actually, I'm doing the exact opposite here. As you may have noticed, I chose to show old footage of this game, and that was deliberate because the new trailer is filled with some pretty major spoilers. I mean, it's a good trailer and all. I'm not saying anything like that. I thought it was very well done. If you've already played the first game, as I have. But if you've never played the original, then this trailer's ridiculous. I was actually shocked at how much of the story Naughty Dog gave away in this specific trailer. See, I think that there's this weird thing that happens where if something's really popular and if it's been out for a while, there's this assumption that everybody knows exactly what's happening in the story, or that it's just okay to openly spoil this type of stuff for fans. Final Fantasy VII, I think, is a perfect example of this type of thing. There's a very specific part of that game that is so openly spoiled, which I think is just a terrible way of going about things, especially now that we're seeing remakes and remasters of these games. There absolutely will be people out there that are experiencing these games for the first time ever. So I just don't really like this type of thing where people just openly spoil this type of stuff, and I guess that's leaked over to Naughty Dog themselves. It's just a weird situation in my opinion, but you know, I guess that's kind of my rant for today. Regardless though, if you haven't played The Last of Us before, and if Part 1 will be your first experience with it, just as a bit of a warning, don't watch that new launch trailer. It is filled with some pretty major spoilers. Moving on though, PlayStation Productions are reportedly working on another game-related film, and this one was a bit of a surprise, being Gravity Rush. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to hear about this one, but I think that it does make a lot of sense, and I think that it will fit this IP very well. We've really seen Sony and PlayStation commit to making their IP more multimedia in recent years, bringing them to a broader audience, if you will, which, I mean, I think that's a very smart initiative, but so far, we've really mostly seen them stick with their popular and beloved franchises like Last of Us, that's coming out next year. You have Uncharted that came out earlier this year, Ratchet & Clank, Ghost of Tsushima, and games like that. Gravity Rush, though, this is an IP that is much smaller, to the point there's serious doubt if we'll even get another installment. I mean, Japan Studio, technically, they don't even exist anymore. You do have Team Asobi, but Japan Studio itself is, you know, they're kind of gone, so I think the foregone conclusion was that Gravity Rush 2, which is a very good and overlooked first-party title from PlayStation, I think most people just kind of assumed that that would likely be the last game. However, with this news here, it does appear that Sony hasn't completely forgotten about Gravity Rush after all, and while it may not necessarily be a new game per se, I still think that this is very good news for fans, and hey, I mean, if this turns out to be successful, maybe, just maybe, that will revive hope for a third game. If anything, though, I think Gravity Rush 2 very much could make for a good animation. The anime art style is just so beautiful in this series, and with its superhero abilities, they could really expand on its story, its characters, and universe. So either way, I think this is great news for fans of the franchise. Okay, so let's just go and talk about that Phil Spencer Bloomberg interview, though. I mean, when it comes to Phil Spencer, if he publicly talks, people listen. He usually offers great insight to the game industry, how Xbox is approaching different situations, and then he also likes to tease future plans. And you kind of got all those points today in his interview with Bloomberg. Now, there are 3 talking points that we'll kind of go over here. The first of which is the Activision Blizzard acquisition. Obviously, this is a very big story that everybody's kind of been following all year long. We all want to see how this deal plays out. And Phil Spencer was asked about his progress here, and let's just go check out his response. He stated, "I feel good about the progress that we've been making, but I go into the process supportive of people who maybe aren't as close to the gaming industry asking good, hard questions about what is our intent. What does this mean? If you play it out over 5 years, is this constricting a market? Is it growing a market? I've never done a $70 billion deal, so I don't know what my confidence means. I will say the discussions we've been having seem positive." So Phil Spencer here is expressing confidence in the progress of the buyout, which really echoes the same sentiment we've heard from other Microsoft representatives as well. They all seem pretty happy with how things have gone so far, which is certainly a very good sign going forward. I mean, as always, we'll kind of have to see how all this plays out in the long run, but the likely chance of it making it through regulations, I think, just kind of continues to look more and more realistic as we get more information. Everything is kind of pointing upward for this acquisition. Speaking of the acquisition, though, exclusivity versus multi-platform has been a hot topic. Will franchises like Call of Duty remain multi-platform after the buyout? And Phil Spencer did make an interesting remark claiming that the idea of games made exclusively for one device is quote-unquote something we're just going to see less and less of, as time goes on. And I have seen a lot of discussion over this statement online, which kind of surprised me at first because, I don't really even think this is in question by this point. We've been seeing it for quite a while, actually. Xbox releases all their games on PC. Xbox Game Pass is everywhere it can possibly be. xCloud, that's a thing. And the barrier for entry is pretty minimal anymore. And you can even kind of say the same thing with Sony to a lesser degree. Sony, they are taking a similar direction with their very own games. They are releasing a lot of their first-party games on PC. And without a doubt, I expect a lot more of that going forward. So I don't really find this remark overly surprising per se, but I, however, don't think that this suddenly means that PlayStation and Xbox are just going to release all of their games on opposing consoles outside of a select few popular IP that they've acquired in recent years, such as Destiny with Sony, that will remain multi-platform going forward, and games like Minecraft, and more than likely Call of Duty from Microsoft. However, with both Sony and Microsoft, we're already getting the inclusion of more devices like PC and then cloud game streaming, so in that aspect, Phil Spencer, I think, is correct. Nintendo, though, they're the ones that I think will commit to only their own consoles for the foreseeable future. I don't know if they'll start to release their games on PC anytime soon. They always just kind of do their own thing, as we all know, and I expect no different here. One of the more interesting parts of this interview, though, was that Phil Spencer did seemingly tease more buyouts in the future. Now, I don't think that this is necessarily overly surprising either. I think a lot of us already expected this anyways, but he did kind of tease what type of studios they might target going forward. As you can see here, he said, "I'm always thinking about things that add to our capability. Even though we've worked on our geographic expansion, I'd still say we have too many of our creators in places that are our traditional markets." So there you have it. Not only does he want more studios, he made that very clear here, but specifically he wants to add more diversity. Right now, if you look at things, they mainly have North American studios and then a few over in places like UK. But this here, it indicates they might be looking elsewhere in places like Japan, as an example, where they've struggled at in the past. Of course, they've made a big turnaround in Japan this generation, and they are getting a lot more Japanese games than what they did on the Xbox One. But even then, there's still a lot of room for improvement over there. And a Japan studio acquisition could go a long way in doing just that, especially if they were to get a high-profile studio. Now, the first two that immediately comes to mind are Platinum Games, which have already been heavily rumored thanks to their own comments, and then you have Mistwalker. Mistwalker and Xbox had a very good partnership back on the Xbox 360 with games like Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon. Microsoft does own those IP, and fans have been wanting a sequel for those games ever since. So here, maybe this is finally the chance for that happening, and Lost Odyssey, that could very much be Xbox's own Final Fantasy, with the father of Final Fantasy Hironobu Sakaguchi himself. But, that's for a different day. Either way, though, with this statement here, it does sound like these are some of the studios that they could be looking at in the future. Though also, pay attention to other regions as well. Don't just focus on Japan. The Stalker studio, as an example, that was originally in the Ukraine. That could be a prime candidate. Asobo is another one. I believe they're located over in France. They worked on games like Flight Simulator and, The Plague Tale, games like that. And there's several Korean and Chinese studios as well that's on the rise right now. So there's a lot of possibilities here going forward. But the one thing that you should absolutely take from this interview is that after Microsoft finishes up with Activision Blizzard, they're going right back on a hunt for more buyouts. Do not expect any slowdown in the coming years. Now, we do also have a new Nintendo event to talk about. Unfortunately, still no Direct, hopefully next month. But until then, at least we do have something to look forward to here. Nintendo did surprisingly announce a new Treehouse showcase that's actually going live tomorrow on August 25th. Here they plan to take a deep dive into Splatoon 3's single-player mode, then stage and strategies for the Splatfest world premiere demo, and then last but not least, a world-first gameplay reveal for Harvestella. So on one side, this is a smaller scale showcase, but I still think that this is very exciting for fans that are anticipating either one of these games. I think especially with Splatoon 3, this is very popular Nintendo IP, and that game is right around the corner, and we still haven't seen much on a single player. I mean, yes, that kind of makes sense and everything because this is primarily a multiplayer-driven game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no interest whatsoever in a single player. The single player in Splatoon 2 was actually pretty good, and I'm sure that there are people out there that will absolutely specifically buy this game because of its single player component. So an event like this will be perfect for those fans. We can kind of just see how it's evolved from Splatoon 2. All in all, though, Harvestella, that's the one that I want to see. I think this is actually a really interesting game. It's like Square Enix's take on something like Harvest Moon, as an example. It's kind of like a mix of Final Fantasy with a bit of a farming sim, and it does look pretty good. I think that it does have some potential to be very successful if done right. I know these games can be very addictive, and with that Final Fantasy-like gameplay, it could be a pretty cool mix. That there, though, is the big question, and that's where the showcase will be really interesting. Here, we'll get to see a deeper look into the game and see if it's more than just potential. Is this game actually as interesting as it appears to be? And some of those questions might be answered tomorrow, again on August 25th. If you are looking forward to either one of these games, though, go ahead and tune in at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, does it influence your purchasing decision when a game reviews below a 70 overall score on Metacritic? When a game scores below a 70, that's whenever it's a little bit more universally criticized. So I really want to see your all's thoughts here, especially with what's happening with Saints Row. Kind of get back to that here in just a moment. But as you can see, 47% of you all voted yes, while 46% of you voted no. So as you can see here, the results are split almost right down the middle, and without a doubt, it looks like low scores do affect a lot of people out there. Now, I did see several comments saying that they don't trust critics and they prefer to base their decisions on their own instincts, or they like to follow individual reviewers that they do trust on places like YouTube. So a lot of different opinions on the matter. But the reason that I wanted to ask this today specifically is because of Saints Row. This is a well-known franchise, and unfortunately, its new entry is not doing well critically. Currently has a 63 overall score, which is not exactly what you want to see from a franchise of this caliber. For that matter, you all voted for it as your most anticipated August game just earlier this month. So I wanted to see if its scores might affect your all's final decision on the matter, and it does appear, at the very least, for a lot of you, it absolutely does. I will ask you all, though, if you were excited about Saints Row originally, do you still intend to buy it, or have some of the reviews made you kind of pause? I know for myself, when I see a game score this low, it does kind of make me double take. I already have a lot of games to play as is, but at the same time, admittedly, I've also enjoyed some games that's reviewed poorly in the past. Rise, Son of Rome, and The Order 1886 always kind of comes to mind in topics like this, but it's certainly interesting to see how critics influence purchasing decisions, as you're kind of seeing here. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.